kick things off. So good morning again, or good afternoon again. Thanks for joining us this morning. My name is Ollie Parker. I'm on the commercial team here at Blackbird. You'll also hear the velvety voice of Mr. Hugh Diamond this morning. He's our Director of Product and Operations as well. What we're going to do today is give you a bit of a background and an introduction, at least I will, as to Blackbird, some of our customers and workflows, and an intro to the technology that we have powering the solution. And then I'm going to hand over to Hugh, and he's going to give us a demonstration. Now, obviously today, as you know, we're focusing on the fast turnaround of content, primarily from live sources from Blackbird. So we're going to hone in a little bit more on the tools we have, the ability to turn around fast from live, and also some of the publishing options and functions that we have in terms of the actual conform and delivery of content in Blackbird that make that quick, easy, and the quickest solution on the market for getting professional edited content to air. But we have, and in these sessions often we do a little bit more on the collaborative nature of Blackbird and the high-end edit tools that we use in longer form content such as multicam and other things. So we're not gonna get into that stuff today, but if anybody certainly operates within but also outside of the kind of fast turnaround of live, obviously we're happy to share and connect and cover that stuff off and obviously answer questions on that at the end as well. So we're going to talk to you for about 30-35 minutes. Please type your questions into the Q&A section you'll find in the Zoom webinar here. We might answer some of those typing in, but we'll probably answer most of them verbally at the end of the demo session. You'll also get a poll pop up on your screen towards the end today. That just allows you to let us know if you want to get in touch and speak in more detail, and we'll give you some contact details and stuff like that as well. Okay, so let's go for it. So now, if you're on the webinar, you probably have an idea already. Blackbird is a cloud-based, browser-based video editing tool. And for those of you who haven't seen us or had an introduction to Blackbird before, essentially what we do is we enable our customers to access their media, and that can be file-based content. Today we're focusing mainly on that of live streams. And those streams, content can exist on-premise in traditional infrastructure, or in the cloud, or in data centers, or anywhere really. We don't mind, we don't move it, but we give you access to that in a web browser. And then we have functions from simple clipping, sequencing, all the way through to the full nonlinear editor running in that browser interface before we conform, publish, and deliver that content back to you. So we've been doing this for quite a long time, and the history of the company actually is in the post-production world. So for maybe even as much as 15 years, Blackbird's been working with and still work with pretty much every post facility, certainly in Soho and beyond. And you can see Evolutions and Envy and some of our core partners on this slide here. And that's great for us because that's given us a backing, and we've been tried and tested in the highest ends of content production workflows within that realm for a long time. But in the last few years, certainly we've seen a massive uptake in large media organizations moving workflows to the cloud, moving live production workflows to the cloud. And that's where customers you can see here, such as IMG, Delta Tray, the NRL, and Arsenal and Liverpool, and these kinds of live sports and live news customers come into effect for us. So we have a wide range of workflows across these customers. You can obviously guess, for customers like A&E, we're doing a lot of long form production content workflows. But as I said, today we're focusing mainly on live. And you can see some of our core partners across the bottom there. These live workflows can exist within any of those public cloud platforms, within Tata data center infrastructure, and in any of those, one of the predominant technical forms of source that we're taking in is ZXC, and we have a direct partnership and integration with the ZXC transport stream protocol as well. Okay, so the reason that our customers come to us can be boiled down into a few core points here. Speed and agility, big one for the session that we're talking about today. Obviously, this is one of the core reasons that people start to look to cloud in the first place. The agility and the speed of access that cloud gives you in general, But for Blackbird, this is often and most commonly about giving people immediate access to those live streams without having to go through often pretty tedious workflows where people end up moving a lot of content around. So definitely one of the areas where Blackbird can help out. This comes with a lot of cost savings. Traditional application-based infrastructures around live include a lot of cloud infrastructure, a lot of VM and connectivity, virtual desktop solutions, encoders, and all sorts of things that you have to put in the cloud. And Blackbird can represent some pretty significant infrastructure and cost savings against that. Particularly relevant at the moment, remote working. Some of you, a lot of you on the call, probably be familiar with some other methods of connecting into content that are out there. And I think what we've seen at the moment is a lot of people realizing that connecting two sites is very different to connecting to everybody's homes. And certainly Blackbird's professional edit tools running on as little as a 2 meg internet connection in a standard web browser really opens up a lot more avenues to make the most of remote home working and remote production workflows compared to any other solution that's out there. Now, quality is a big thing for us, not just the quality of the tool set, which you'll get a glimpse of today in the demo, but also the fact that the way we architect our solution gives full broadcast quality video output. So we have that full range from the social media workflows all the way to content that's going out for traditional linear broadcast as well, and everything in between. And video everywhere is not just about distribution, but for a lot of our customers, this is about video being accessible everywhere within their business. So a single point of access, a single solution that can be used across all of your teams, social, digital, promos, marketing, all the way through to production and those traditional post-production workflows that I mentioned as well. So some of the real differentiators in terms of the value that Blackbird can add when people are out there looking for cloud workflows that could make a significant difference to their business today. Two examples I'm going to run through before I just talk a little bit about the technology and then hand over to Hugh, of a couple of customers that are key in the respect to this. One is Delta Tray. We do a lot with Delta Tray, as you can see here, various different kind of sports projects. But a key one for us is their use of Blackbird on the NFL European Game Pass product. So this is actually where every single live stream of every NFL game is coming into Microsoft Azure. And we sit on top of that, as I said, so we can give within a few seconds anybody anywhere in the world access to watch, clip, edit, and publish from those live streams. Now, this is teams based in LA, teams based in Turin in Italy. Obviously, they can be based anywhere they like. And not just doing the kind of clipping and social and stuff like that, but obviously multiple audio track management, real-time transitions, and all the other functions we have, allowing them to move through highlights creation all the way to the full 45-minute game edit, the full game edit that they do that ends up on the European SVOD service in the morning. And in terms of speed of turnaround, the most critical thing here is that not just, we all know it's critical to get social content and things like that out incredibly quickly. But also they want that full edit, the full game, and all of that content available for the European commuters, before when they get up in the morning and get on that train, or used to get on that train to get to work in the morning. Now, one other example here, which is really particularly critical around speed, is the NRL in Australia. And the NRL, obviously, as most sports federations do, have certain rights to content that they can exploit and certain rights to content that they've sold to live broadcast partners, both domestically and internationally. So for the NRL, they were not only looking for a solution where they could create highlights packs for their own international digital platform, which they use Blackbird for, of course, but around getting that limited amount of content that they can put on social out there incredibly quickly. They wanted to have content on Twitter in around 2 minutes. We're allowing them to edit professionally in just a few seconds behind live, and that means they can be actioning publishers, and we can have that content up on Twitter in around 30 seconds, which is not necessarily slower than the actual live broadcast might end up on an OTT platform as well. So absolutely critical to their business that they maximize what they get out of the content they're allowed to publish from live, and the speed with which we can do that is obviously unparalleled. Okay, so the last bit of what I want to do today before I hand over for the demo is just to introduce the actual technology that's behind this to you, to give you an idea of how we do this, and why the architecture adds a bit of value to that. So I'm going to hop over here to a web browser. And I'm just running inside Google Chrome today, as is Hugh. We don't have any special requirements at all related to the browser. And I'm on our website, so blackbird.video. If you haven't been there already, go and have a look. On the solution page here, there's an example of a clip using the Blackbird video technology. Now, I can play this clip, as you would expect. I'm just watching a video in a standard web browser. But as you can see here, I actually have a visualization of the content that's coming. I can zoom out here, or I can zoom all the way in and actually view every single frame of media on my timeline. Now, not only can I visualize my content like this, but I can move through this in a completely non-linear, instant fashion. I have no buffering, no latency, no blockiness or download time or anything like that. I can move forward frame by frame with audio that's also frame accurate. And I can play and navigate through my content at multiple speeds, forwards and backwards and so on. So all of this type of access and navigation to content is what you would expect if you were working in a traditional edit application on local media. It is completely impossible to navigate and access video like this with any other kind of browser-based technology. And this is what's really special about Blackbird. It's what allows us to build those edit tools and give the users that kind of experience and navigational tools to the media inside a web browser. And this is completely unique. Our technology is not based on any other kind of video encoding technology that's out there. And we have about 14 or so patents around this as well. Now, what we do, slip back to PowerPoint for one last slide here to give you an idea of how we architect this, is essentially we run a software application called Blackbird Edge, and that sits wherever your streams are. So this could be on an on-premise server or a virtual machine. The only real reason to run it on a server would be if you want to take advantage of our ability to take baseband SDI signals in directly. Otherwise, we're often running in the cloud. So if you have streams coming in through any of those providers or even your own data center, we can pick up that Zixi stream, RTMP, HLS, or whatever it is directly from there. Now, as soon as Blackbird Edge sees that stream, it's not going to move that to the cloud. So we're not going to compress and take an RTMP into our own platform as others do. We're just going to create that Blackbird format that we've seen on the website there, and we're going to move that to the cloud. So we're essentially creating an extremely highly efficient cache of video content that allows you a completely instant frame-based access to that in the browser. And for the users to access and do multi-track editing on that content, they only need around a 2 megabit internet connection. So the users log in. We'll have a look at that with Hugh in a minute. Essentially, you create a piece of content. And when they publish that content, we're just going to send those decisions and that metadata back to that Blackbird Edge application running on your own infrastructure. It's going to use the high quality, high bitrate stream media, and we're going to render a video. Now we're going to deliver that video asset maybe straight to social media, or possibly back into the cloud CDN or MAM, or just back onto your on-premise. A couple of advantages to this architecture and the way Blackbird works. One is the fact that the infrastructure itself is based around the content, and we're running on your existing infrastructure, whether you're in AWS or on-premise, it doesn't matter. So we're not duplicating and providing our own heavy cloud infrastructure to do this. The second is around quality. Because we're always using that stream source media, we can give you a low bit rate, H.264 that's going straight to social. We can also give you a high bitrate DNX MXF file for broadcast output. So we really, or any combination of those, and Hugh will touch more on those options when we get into the demo. But really the biggest benefit here is around scale, and scaling particularly in terms of users and user access. With other solutions for any kind of professional video editing in the cloud, you're going to be looking at a dedicated virtual machine running an application, probably with a GPU resource for every single user you have. Not to mention encoders to write growing files for Adobe Premiere and so on, or the nearline storage to access that content, and the PC over IP and virtual desktop bandwidth and client hardware you need to actually log into that virtual machine. With Blackbird, if that edge VM or that edge application sees a live stream, you can then have one person, 10 people, 100 or 1,000 people editing on that content. There is no infrastructure behind the users. Everyone is just logged in on standard internet, low bandwidth internet connection potentially, in a standard web browser on a standard laptop. So it's really what our technology allows us to do is really a completely different prospect to any other kind of way of managing professional edit workflows in the cloud. And you know, that's what we hope to get across to you today. Okay, so that's enough for me. I'm going to have a sip of tea and pass over to Hugh, who's going to jump into the Blackbird platform itself and show us how that works.
Perfect, thank you, Ollie. So I'll just get my screen shared out as well. So a few things to note. Obviously, as Ollie has mentioned, Blackbird is fundamentally a web-based platform. Works entirely in a browser, so similar to where Ollie was just loading our player, you'll note that I've actually got access to a live stream that's currently ingesting into one of our Blackbird Edge servers running in the cloud at the moment. So obviously this could be running within a facility, it could be running in a public cloud provider, it could be running in a technology partner's ecosystem. But ultimately what it's doing is enabling you to get fast access to the related content. So you'll see this particular stream's currently been ingesting for about an hour and 15. So it's actually an ice hockey game that's streaming live into one of our Edge servers. And obviously you may be seeing some slightly lower frame rates over the Zoom link, but ultimately what I'm getting as a user is exactly the same quality of navigability that Ollie was displaying in our player technology in the website. So at the moment, you'll note that this content has some chevrons displayed on the navigation bar here, which signify the fact that it's a growing asset that's still being captured into the platform. But what you'll see is that I can, again, get that same fluid and frame accurate control right down to individual frames. So you'll see here, I'm just zooming in and out on the timeline whilst I'm navigating around the content. So I'm using a combination of mouse wheel, trackpad, and some keyboard shortcuts to rapidly gain access to exactly the frames that I may be interested in for some very fast turnaround of content. So in terms of orientation, I'm within my Blackbird account. This is a shared account resource across the users that gain access to it. But essentially what I'm going to show is some of the concepts that enable us to be faster than our competition in terms of being able to edit this type of content remotely. So you may know I'm in a fairly simple view of Blackbirds at the moment. This is really what we would call our clipping or our storyboard mode. So any of you that have maybe got some background in more traditional editing applications, we'll move on to some of the more advanced features, but really just to give you a flavor of some of the speed and access that can be gained to content. So what I'm going to do to start with is essentially start playing this content. I'm going to do a bit of navigation around, and essentially what you'll see is that I'm just very quickly marking some in and out points, assigning some keywords to the clips. So ultimately what I'm doing is simulating what someone may be doing in a live game scenario, which is they're accessing the content. Obviously this could be sporting content or news or indeed anything that's live being captured and requires fast turnaround. But I'm using a combination of keyboard shortcuts to essentially navigate, to mark the related pieces of content. And actually what you'll also see is that I can start to use these to drive individual publishing and distribution jobs. So that was a goal just going in. I could potentially grab that and immediately start to publish the assets related to it. So I've just quickly dragged that particular goal over onto an export location, which could be pushing to social media, potentially for short form publishing, could be publishing to my own OTT or CMS platform for consumer delivery or premium subscriber usage. But ultimately, again, what I'm able to do is rapidly make sure that I'm not interrupting the flow of my game. So I've immediately gone straight back to the point of live. I'm gaining access to the same content that I was manipulating before. I've not had to split off into any separate workflows. Essentially, I'm back into the action of the game. We have a number of customers who will often have one user covering multiple games simultaneously in multiple browser tabs. Essentially, that's one of the benefits of scalability and the fact that we're such a rapid tool to be able to use. And things like the navigation bar allow for that seamless access and very, very rapid navigation through the platform. So I'm just going to create a couple of additional clips. So at the moment, what you'll see is that in the space of a couple of seconds, what I've done is to really just identify 3 individual clips of content. You'll see these have whilst I've been clipping and selecting them and very quickly annotating them, which is the kind of thing that people would be doing during a game. It's actually been also constructing behind the scenes. The editor has automatically been generating a timeline for these clipping decisions that I've made. So essentially I could then, in addition to any publishing that I've done during the game, I could then also selectively be pushing assets off to different destination platforms. So let's say, for example, our goal shot, so I could publish that out to Twitter and also enhance that with any additional specific copy text that might be relevant to that particular post to get some fan engagement. So any one of the individual clips on that sequence can be used to get content pushed out. Now, obviously, for a fast turnaround of clip content during a game, that's one aspect. But also in terms of the workflow, obviously what I've been doing during the game is collecting a number of different high value pieces of content which have instantaneous value in creating a highlights package. So potentially a single game highlights package or a multi-game highlights package. And again, this is where we can jump into some ever so slightly more advanced workflows, but still along the lines of fast turnaround. So I've just switched my mode actually into a timeline mode, which anyone who's familiar with an editing system would immediately understand. But essentially it's exactly the same clips that I've had clipped and pushed out whilst I've been doing the original game capture. So again, a few things to note. I've got exactly the same navigation characteristics. I can immediately gain access to any of this content and review it. I can tweak and tune in points and out points, potentially just cut out a bit of additional content that might not be relevant to the actual highlights reel. And also, you'll note I can use my keyboard shortcuts to very rapidly enhance this content for a fast turnaround of highlights production. So I'm going to run through a couple of workflow scenarios here along that line. So I've got my 3 clips. You'll see I'm just quickly navigating between the individual clips on the timeline just by going through with some keyboard shortcuts. I'm going to zoom into the timeline there and actually just very quickly add some V fades through white. Again, a single key press I've done to add that. This is the kind of effect that's particularly popular in sporting content. It gives a good high action view to end consumers. So again, what you'll see is essentially, and I'm not having to do any complex mouse moves or anything else. I can immediately add those to a timeline, immediately preview them and frame accurately verify that everything is absolutely correct. And it may be in this particular example, I didn't want my V fade, but it's very, very straightforward to add these types of these types of operation into a set of combined actions to really simplify the process of creating professional content rapidly. So within the space of a couple of seconds, what I've done is to very quickly review the individual editing decisions, and it may be at this point that's absolutely sufficient to potentially publish, again, maybe to social or delivery or to another output, potentially exporting a clean version for broadcast or delivery back to a linear service. But again, if we were to take a typical scenario, one of the things may be to push this same sequence off to something like an OTT platform or a content delivery network, at which point we can combine that original video edit, which again I've done within the matter of seconds, with additional metadata, like for example what the content is that may assist in routing and making sure that the content gets to consumers in the most efficient and guided way. So things like this, pushing to a custom CMS output with the ability to flag asset types. And this is all entirely customizable, but typically CDNs and delivery platforms will also include key functionality such as geo restrictions of assets and other metadata that help guide the content through the flow of those downstream platforms. So again, within a couple of seconds, I've done that, which is essentially that base level of metadata, which would determine how it's served to the end users. And for this particular output, you'll note I've still actually only got the 3 clips on my timeline, but really to emphasize the speed of and efficiency of Blackbird is that along with the basic editing decisions that I made with a couple of those V fades through white that you'll note, essentially what I've also done is push this to a branded export location. Now, that means that essentially behind the scenes, what's going to happen is that the editing that I've done has been exported as a file-based asset. And I'll very quickly just load that up. So this is actually an H.264 export, but it gives you an idea of some of the capabilities. But essentially what we've got here is a video asset which has been automatically branded. This is done through some configuration within the Blackbird platform, but you'll see here we've added a pre-roll. We've also automatically branded with our Blackbird logo there, just up in the top right of the screen. And then along with the primary editing output of the content, including all of the manipulation that I've done, it's also got an end board on it as well. So, really to emphasize the speed of operation, what I've done in the matter of a couple of seconds, and obviously I've been describing this as I've gone along, is create what could be a fully formed highlights reel for delivery out to social, to broadcast, to an owned and operated platform or content delivery network. And then really to give you an idea of some of the capabilities that can overlay on top of that, because Blackbird is entirely constructed from the ground up to be a professional grade of feature set. I get access to controls which in a simple web-based clipping solution, you fundamentally wouldn't have access to. Things like color adjustment. So I can boost saturation, I can adjust white levels, adjust black levels, really to make the content that I'm capturing and the content that I'm delivering look as good as possible once it reaches those consumers. And again, without having to go back to any external systems, I could simply republish that to any one of the outputs, and all of the manipulation that I've been able to do within the editor is rendered back against that original asset by the edge server, which is running wherever your content is. So there's no concerns about having to upload that content to us. And also there's no concerns about the users having direct access to it, because again, just to remind you, I'm doing all of this within a standard web browser, no plugins, no extensions, just a Google Chrome in my particular example, but essentially any JavaScript enabled browser. And a lot of the speed is driven by the effectiveness of the user interface, but also it's driven by familiarity. So you'll note that I've done a couple of operations through this short edit, where I've been driving some of the operation via some keyboard shortcuts. That's a great way of getting a highly scalable operation, because it's, in many cases, much faster for end users. And essentially, because we've got such a wide reach across a varying number of workflows, we have keyboard shortcut sets that are entirely customizable and familiar for people who might be using existing Adobe Premiere or Avid Media Composer, or even Final Cut 7 keyboard layout. So it reduces the time to get customers and end users on board, improves the process of getting familiar with the platform, and simplifies the operation. So I should also add, in addition to some of those core capabilities, there are additional more advanced features for being able to apply additional branding and elements within the edit session. Obviously, I added a lot of branding automatically on my OTT publish, along with the sidecar metadata that was exported. But that can be done very rapidly in the edit session as well. And the complexity that can be constructed for more advanced deliveries, again, capitalizes on the speed of Blackbird, but really allows users to get more control over the content. So in the matter of a couple of seconds, I've added a static end board there, and a small lower third, which is quite hard to see on the white there, but you can just about make it out. And I could also enrich that with some additional text-based data, like what the content is. And this can also be driven in a number of workflows by things like closed caption data or subtitle data to, again, improve the efficiency and effectiveness of what's being pushed out and when it's being pushed out. So really the sole objective is about efficiency and scalability of the operation. But most importantly, with speed, not compromising on the quality and consistency of what's going out in terms of your brand and your outward facing persona that's associated with your content. So hopefully that gives you a good feel for some of the core capabilities. Obviously, in addition to that, I would also just stress the fact that everything is web-based. Everything's running in a browser. I can't do anything in here which is destructive. I can save and collaborate between myself and other users. So I could save my sequence into the account. Others could then do subsequent edit work on it, pick it up and collaborate on it with full version control, and collaborative tools inside the platform. But also, there's no way to destroy anything that I've done. Things that even get deleted are retained within our recycle bins and recovery bins. So really, in terms of efficiency, often efficiency is bigger than just creating the initial content. It's about being able to repurpose existing content, and it's about being able to continue the job in the case where you may be juggling a number of different things, which in the case of live is particularly the case. Super. So I think at this point, we'll be moving over to some of the questions.
Thanks, Hugh. And hopefully everyone on the call can see, obviously, some of the really key aspects around how Blackbird can help with the fast turnaround of content here. Not just as we've seen from Hugh, the creating, selecting clips and actioning those publishes in just a few seconds, but creating advanced highlights packs from sports or news packs. News packages from press conferences and so on coming into the platform from live. And one of the key things as well, obviously, is actually the fact that a single user can do both of those things at the same time. So the fact that you're making selections and editing on a timeline doesn't stop you from clipping and throwing those publishes out directly from your source as well. So, not just fast, incredibly flexible tool in terms of creating that content really quickly. So yeah, well, let's do a few questions. We've had quite a few of them come in so far. So I'll start off myself, and then I'll probably read you a couple, Hugh. So keep your mute button handy. I won't name names, but there's one here from a person that I believe is in Australia. So I'll answer this one first, just in case you've run out of coffee. So our news edit compression format is XDCAM35 in an MXF. Do we support it? Yes, we do. So we support, in terms of file-based content, pretty much all standard file formats as an ingest. And again, the outputs can be anything from MOV-wrapped H.264 or so on, all the way up to DVC, DNX, XDCAM, in MXF wrappers. And essentially, in terms of the bit rate we support, it tends to be whatever the source that we're reading from is in the first place. So if you can have extremely high bit rate files in, then we can give you the same back most of the time. And the second part to the question is about the difference between our tool sets and other or traditional editing applications, so Premiere, Edius, Final Cut Pro, and so on. Now, essentially, Blackbird is with the first ones to say, Blackbird is not a full craft editor that you would compare to something like Adobe Premiere, certainly in terms of editing and finishing longer form content. So pretty much all of our customers within the live news, live sports, and that kind of realm, Blackbird is the finishing tool. We have, you've seen some of the stuff we've got today from Hugh, 12 video tracks, 32 audio tracks. All of those can be individually manipulated, support scale and movement, position manipulation, keyframing. Audio can be fully controlled with pan and level. We have voiceover, titling, captioning, even basic color correction, multicam support, and all sorts of really advanced functionality in the editor, which means we're definitely up there creating very high quality content in those kind of workflows. However, we, as I said at the start, we do a lot of traditional post workflows where that content might need really advanced visual effects, image treatment, and maybe professional color grading. And those are the scenarios where, to answer someone else's question, we can hand an AAF back to traditional edit applications like Premiere or Avid Media Composer for you to do that grading and that final finishing on that content. One thing I would make distinct, though, is that that's not normally part of a live workflow because, of course, those traditional edit applications cannot take or reference a live stream like an SDI or an RTMP. So there's always a relink factor that we have to consider there. But certainly in our file-based workflows, that is an option for us. Now, within the news and sports realm, obviously all of our customers, by definition, can do everything they need to in Blackbird, and we're delivering high quality finished file and video assets back to them. Okay, so I'll ask on to Hugh here. Since Blackbird is a browser-based, a cloud-based editing tool, obviously internet is required. Hugh, what happens if you get disconnected or there's any kind of dodginess around your internet connection? How does Blackbird handle that?
It's a great question. So that's got a couple of aspects. Blackbird is again, from the ground up, it was designed as a cloud and internet ready set of services. So we've designed the whole platform to handle poor connectivity and latency issues across the public internet. And that's really been built into all of our applications. So we do a lot of intelligent content caching behind the scenes that means that users get the best possible experience at any time. So if, for example, you're on connections with poor latency, typically they'll get smoothed out by some of the mechanics that we've actually built into the platform. Now, if you get totally disconnected, that's not a problem. Anything you've done will be retained. Anything that you're currently working on is still available in the platform. Every button click that you do is essentially resulting in things going back to the core platform. Even things that you haven't saved will typically land in our recovery bin, which allows you to get back to the point at which you were when you had your internet challenges. What I would also note is that we've got a lot of customers working globally on very, very poor internet connections. I mean, obviously with the current issues with virus around the world, lots of people working remotely from home on domestic connections. There's really no requirement to have a high grade of connectivity, and we typically recommend a minimum of 2 megabits per second, so we can get away with a lot on that.
Cheers. I'll throw one more at you, Hugh, while you're talking. Question about editing stream with multiple track or split track audio.
Yep.
So the example here is a common one. You know, a couple of tracks of commentary on a sports game and a couple of additional tracks of crowd noise. So how does Blackbird handle muting, selecting, and using multiple tracks and then publishing them as well?
Yep. Again, great question. Now, essentially, what Blackbird has, and the demo that I gave was really on a fairly basic stream with just a single pair. But ultimately, Blackbird handles every audio channel independently. And there's actually quite a neat track routing capability, which allows you to select and deselect which tracks are going onto your edit, as well as also choose the associated routing for that audio. So let's say, for example, in a sequence, I might want to be working off the audio that's actually on channels 3 and 4 of a live stream. You basically just toggle off 1 and 2, and then automatically your edit's going to inherit the audio from 3 and 4. Obviously, you might want to be a little bit more agile than that, so you may create an edit with all of the audio and then do a bit of cherry picking and potentially manage some audio levels. But essentially then there's 2 different ways of outputting the resulting edit that you've got on your timeline. One is that, and that's our typical output, is doing a mix down of anything that's on the timeline. So that would include any audio leveling, any crossfades and various other different manipulation that you've done in the timeline. And we've also got a split audio mode, which allows you to output full multi-channel audio, anything up to, I believe it's 16 independent audio channels at present on output. So essentially that allows you to cater for workflows where you may need to go to other downstream processes for you know, potentially doing an audio mix or other manipulation.
Thank you. Cool. So I'll grab a question here. Someone's very kindly only asked for a hint about pricing, but I can give a little more than that, hopefully. So there's 2 sides to Blackbird that we price on. We keep it pretty simple, hopefully. One is the number of users that we have working on the platform, and the other is annual licensing for the Edge application. We don't charge by the minute or anything like that. Blackbird is a fixed cost solution, but that Edge, the amount of Edge licensing and infrastructure you have, can scale according to how many live streams you know, you have, or how much publishing you're doing and things like that. So they're the 2 factors for us. You might start off with Blackbird on with a 24/7 live stream coming in, some file-based content as well. You know, as much publishing as you want to do off the back of that, to as many published destinations as you like, and a handful, maybe 5 users. You're probably looking at starting at an average of about $2,000 a month or something like that. And obviously, it's the fact that Blackbird is a fixed budgetable cost cloud solution that again can bring some pretty good business benefits there compared to the often slightly obtuse and open-ended cloud pricing that you see a lot of the time. Now, we've got a lot of questions coming in, which is fantastic. So thank you for that. We're not going anywhere. We're going to sit here and answer all of these. But just in case people do need to move on, I'll say a quick thank you and just move to this slide so that you can see the contact details there. You're also going to get a poll pop up on your screen in a minute, as I mentioned before, so you can enter some poll information and take down our contact details here as well. But as I said, thank you to those of you who need to start peeling off for other meetings. But we're gonna sit here and keep going here. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions here about the Edge hardware and the Edge infrastructure itself. Now, the only reason to run Blackbird Edge, the ingest and publish function that we have on a piece of hardware, really, is if you want to bring SDI into it, and then it's a common super micro server with a Blackmagic board in it, essentially. But obviously, we can share details with people as required. Most of the time, even if it's in a truck or on premise, if we're taking obviously RTMP or HLS or Zixi as a feed, that can run just on a virtual machine, or indeed it runs inside your own AWS or GCP infrastructure, as I said, if that's where the streams exist. And a question here about pre-made templates for kind of graphic overlays, things like that. Essentially, there's two ways that we do that. One is that I can use still or animating background overlays and stylized kind of templated text generation that we do in Blackbird itself. So that gives you the freedom to type and create inside the editor, but you know, we're working on the video layers, and it's not a real-time kind of 3D graphics engine for sure. So when we look at more advanced and data-driven graphics, instead of trying to do that ourselves in the browser, what we tend to do is have some kind of automated workflow where we're picking up externally rendered graphics coming from your existing solution. So that could be After Effects, it could be a Viz or Chiron or ROS or some other kind of external broadcast graphics solution, where those engines can drop us pre-rendered movies with an alpha channel, and that can come right into the correct bin for that project, and you can pop that onto your edit straight away. We'll keep going here. Let me find another question here. Do we integrate sports data feeds to allow clipping in that? So we do have an API for data integration. What we didn't look at today, what I mentioned right at the start, was that Blackbird gets used a lot for logging in longer form production. So we actually have a rich, completely customizable metadata backend within the content itself that's fully searchable. That can be live logged in the platform, or you can actually send in external, maybe event data into the platform that then becomes visible and searchable, associated to time code by the users as well. So that's there really to allow automatically generated data to come in, which makes it very, very easy and quick for users to navigate, find content, obviously clip up and create things from that as well. A question about multiple timelines here. So when you're working in a session, and Hugh will correct me if I'm wrong, you're working in a single timeline. You can absolutely obviously have any number of sequences within the platform. You can work and hand over that sequence to someone else to continue, or indeed you can have multiple people pick up, branch off and version out from their own into their own timelines from something that's created originally as well. Hugh, just shout if you spot any you want to grab here, otherwise I'll keep going.
Yeah, there's quite an interesting one actually. A question about support for equirectangular streams, which I thought I'd pick up. So Blackbird typically deals with standard, what I would say, broadcast resolutions for many workflows. So typically HD, UHD resolutions, and also for things like export, square, vertical, and a variety of others. So we don't have any special support for equirectangular, but many systems and workflows that are using those are typically where you're coupling a Blackbird workflow with some other finishing tools, where you would actually be rendering out the resulting assets along those lines. So in a workflow where we're taking file-based assets in and delivering off to a finishing tool, we don't manipulate those things directly, but there could be a place for Blackbird in those workflows, but not directly supported on the edge.
Thanks, Hugh. There are a few requests for additional information coming in, such as case studies for news channels. I said at the start, we have nearly 50 regional news stations across the US. We're also used by a fairly well publicized global news business across all of their bureaus. A lot of that's on our website, but of course, if you want specific information, again, use the email address that you can see on the screen right now, and we're more than happy to provide some of that. I have a question I'll take here about clipping on multiple camera angles of the same sports event. So essentially, yes, you can have access to an unlimited number of live streams coming into Blackbird. Obviously, the processing of that is happening is being done by Blackbird Edge on your infrastructure. So essentially, as many live streams as you have, the infrastructure can scale very easily to accommodate that. Now, the user can have multiple source windows open in Blackbird, and you can move between these to select pieces of content from those live streams. But we also, as I mentioned before, have certain capabilities around multicam, where I could have synced groups of different input sources, and then I can select and cut and start to edit from those at the same time. So that's definitely something that we excel in. Okay, question about types of video formats here. So I've touched on this, but just to be clear, when we're looking at live workflows, we can take an SDI, baseband source, RTMP, HLS, things such as Zixi transport streams into the platform as well. And we can also read growing files. So we could read as a live source a growing MXF code that's being written as well. In terms of file-based ingest, we support pretty much all of the major kind of standard file formats, both standard kind of delivery wrapped formats, but also given our post-production background, we're pretty good on raw camera formats as well. So again, I'm not gonna list them all, but we've got a pretty good support for everything that's out there. A great question here I'll take about deploying Blackbird. So what's the process here? Now this is really one of our strengths. You may have picked up on that. Essentially, in order to start using Blackbird, all we need to do is deploy usually a virtual machine, and we can obviously do that remotely, either onto your on-premise infrastructure or into your AWS or Google Cloud or Tata infrastructure or so on. That's set up to watch your file storage, or we take in the live streams, and that's really it. So it's not a heavy deployment. We need to put that edge in place that can see your media and your streams, and then all of your users just log in. So there is nothing to install, and there is no infrastructure deployment at all to get users up and running and using Blackbird. So it's something we've done a lot, obviously in the last few months, is look at giving people easy, quick access to on-premise based live streams or network attached storage, and then having all of their users who are sat at home being able to just log in immediately and start to work on that without worrying about connectivity, infrastructure, without worrying about moving content around, access to networks, or any of the other headaches that come with the usual method of basically just moving the machine and trying to connect to it from somewhere else. Cool, so I've still got some good questions coming in here. Thank you, everybody. Question about integrating into news workflows. So talking about kind of MAMs and newsroom systems here. I think as Hugh showed us today, essentially what we do at Blackbird is we have a great capability for handling metadata in and out. So we're quite lucky, really. We don't often have to look at doing kind of in-depth API-based integrations, but essentially, certainly if we're sat upstream on a live stream, what we do is we make sure that when we're publishing a video asset, we can give you, depending on potentially multiple endpoints for the content that's coming out of Blackbird, we can give you a custom metadata XML sidecar with it. So to answer one of the other questions here, that could be a single publish action that can give you multiple different video assets. So this could be a stem package of multiple bitrate video files coming out of the platform with a thumbnail and with that custom XML sidecar as well. So that can be picked up then by a news system, a MAM CDN or PAM function or anything like that, to bring that asset in with all the relevant metadata to be able to either make it usable to people or to actually just automatically push that right down through the content distribution chain from there. Okay, I think we're just about getting there. A question about supporting .mov. Yeah, absolutely. So we can import and export out to MOV wrapped files of various formats, for sure. Hugh, you've marked one here. I'm going to ask you, what kind of metadata tools do we have, and how do we manage our live content?
Yeah, I've flagged that one. Yeah, so in terms of metadata tools, we've got a very advanced set of data logging tools that can be driven in a number of different ways, and it's very flexible. What you don't need to do with us is to go through any complex data mapping process. Essentially, we have what we would call metadata columns, and those columns can be bound to a number of different things. They can be entered manually by people who might be either transcribing or translating or logging and annotating content, again using a number of optimizations on data entry, like keyboard shortcuts for specific terms and keywords. And then also the exact same data can be driven from captioning workflows. So if you've got, let's say, an SDI stream or an HLS stream or another stream with embedded captions, we can use that to drive the data workflows. And then the last implementation is by driving that same data from an external system through the use of our API, which allows for some more flexible workflows around getting data that might exist in other platforms, whether it's data generation companies or in-house systems. So 3 different methods, but ultimately still using the same infrastructure and allowing users to get rapid access to individual shots or clips based on that metadata.
Excellent, thanks, Hugh. And you've flagged another one here about anything big on roadmaps. So I don't know whether we can talk a little bit about some of the, in general, the direction that we're taking the product in.
Yeah, I thought I'd flag that one. I mean, at the heart of it, we're a technology and IP company, so we are continually striving to improve, optimize, and streamline the platform. So in terms of the roadmap, a lot of the work we've done recently has been about making sure that we've got full support for all of the various different ingest formats across all of the public cloud providers and infrastructure providers. So essentially making it a standardized offering across all of those for edge servers. And then in terms of feature sets, we're doing some additional work around the editor itself to improve some of the user experience, a simplified view for clippers. And then we've also got some work going on around some specific features that are gradually coming through the design and development process. I mean, in particular, I know there were a few people asking about news workflows, but some of the things we've been working on around content blurring in the editor as well are particularly useful for those sorts of workflows. So we've always got a lot going on, but hopefully that gives you a flavour for some of the items that are on the relatively short-term roadmap.
Cheers, Hugh. Thank you. So I'm just trawling through a few more of the questions we've still got here. One question, interesting one about the advantages of Blackbird versus other solutions. Now, if we're talking about professional editing, the other solutions are usually running one of the well-known edit applications on a laptop locally, or running it somewhere else. That's it, right? It's got to be on a machine, and someone's going to be using that on a machine. Now, one of the key things to point out before we even talk about the actual edit application is that in live workflows that we're focusing on today, to use a traditional edit tool, the first thing you're going to need to do is bring those live streams down into an encoder and use an encoding function to probably create a growing file in order to be able to access those. So first off, one of the major drawbacks in terms of traditional editing applications is that they don't natively take live streams in. So that's the first thing. And then generally, if the other 2 options we've looked at, if you have users remotely running an edit application on a laptop, obviously the big headache and the big thing you've got to do is move all your content to that laptop. Okay. So you need to be able to either move your content around. Obviously, there's some security issues around that. If you're downloading files, even proxy files down onto local users' machines, you're losing a little bit of control over that. So that's some pretty big headaches there, and I think everyone knows really that moving every file out to every user is not really a sensible solution. So the other option, and the common option, is to take that edit application and run it on a virtual machine somewhere in the cloud. Now, if you do that, as I mentioned before, not only does that mean that you have to massively scale your cloud infrastructure, because every user needs a virtual machine, that virtual machine also needs expensive, what is often called persistent storage of the media in the cloud. So you need to move your media from often long-term cloud storage to local cloud storage. And there's often a lot of hidden charges and egress charges just to move content between different regions within a public cloud infrastructure as well. And then the users generally need some client hardware and a PC over IP or virtual desktop solution that often requires between 30 and 50 megabits of internet connection per user to connect into those virtual machines. So what you're really doing there is, you're approaching tomorrow's problem with yesterday's solution, and shoehorning it into the cloud. And obviously the big advantage with Blackbird is the fact that the users do not have to connect to that source media. They're using the cached Blackbird version that we've got in the cloud. They're editing that immediately. It's responsive, it's accurate, it's professional. In terms of the security issues, nothing is coming down to the user PC. Everything the user's doing in the browser, everything that you've all seen Hugh do today, is actually just cached within the RAM of the machine. So it's completely secure. When I close my browser session, there's nothing remaining on my laptop at all. So, Blackbird really is completely different to any other solution where you're essentially moving a function somewhere else and trying to connect to it. Blackbird allows anybody anywhere to log in on a native web browser, still to perform professional edit functions on file-based or live stream content without a lot of the time, without even moving that source media to the cloud at all. And for a lot of our users, it's the fact that you can have a cloud workflow working on traditional on-premise source media, essentially, that's the critical thing for us. Okay, so we've got a question, a couple of other questions here that, to be honest, are quite specific. So if we don't answer to your question now, I'd suggest you probably drop it to us in an email, and we're happy to expand on some of these. A quick one here about IP rights issues. So yeah, Blackbird does not get involved in the intellectual property rights of any content or anything that's going through the platform. We also have extremely high security levels. Obviously, again, information that we regularly share with our customers and contacts around how we manage security. But we take that very, very seriously, and no, we don't have any impact on the actual rights of the material at all that's running through the platform. Question about latency. So as you've seen, if we have a live stream coming in, you can be viewing, editing and publishing from that normally around 5 seconds behind live. So extremely fast access to that content in the browser, even if that live stream is existing as maybe an SDI on premise. And in terms of publishing output, again, as soon as I action that publish, I don't have to wait for a render. It's not happening in my browser. The Edge server will handle that. And we're often publishing content at maybe 2 or 3 times faster than real time, depending on codec and so on. So it's really pretty fast, very fast in and very fast out to get that full workflow from live all the way through to actual delivery of that content as well. And here, upload speeds and connections. So we've talked about the users needing about as little as 2 meg to edit. The Edge server itself is still also pretty low in terms of bandwidth requirements. For me to have live stream coming in with audio and coming up to make that available to people, the Edge server may only need around 4 or 5 meg of internet to do that in real time on a live stream. Okay, so I think we're probably running out of time. We've got to let everyone get on with their day. As I said, we can pick up some of the infrastructure specific questions we've got happily. Get in touch and we can have either a direct follow-up call, a demo to dig into these things. More than happy to do that in private sessions as well. Or obviously we can answer questions and do any more of that over email. But otherwise for now, I'll say again, thank you. Thank you very much to all of you who are still on with us today, for giving us so much of your time. And we look forward to picking up the conversation and speaking to you very soon. Thanks.